There's also a thing too where like Thompson says it's like their 60 something World Series. I don't know if that's accurate. I mean,
You would be the guy to know.
I mean, I've done a lot of like reason, like I've tried, like I want to put a history of the World Series on Near's website, like I've done for a bunch of other events, and I think they say it's like 60 something years, which that brings you into the 60s.
They say 61st was last year's.
Okay, so that would mean 1960. 1963. If 2023 is the 61st, and 1963 was the first. So there's a lot of like there's not really going to be maybe track programs there, but like I have programs from like the 70s, and it doesn't say that it's the 15th World Series. It says it's like the 7th.
Really?
And that's the problem you have I mean, I'm getting on another topic here, but that's the problem you have with when I got this a lot with the Speedbowl, and it would be the same if you wanted to unify Thompson's World Series, because no one's ever done it, is that it's like the telephone game.
How would you find this out? How do you go about finding this out?
Well, like when I did the Speedbowl, I this is how much of a nerd I am. This is like 15 years ago, but I had a day job back then. I took one of my weeks paid vacation, and every day I went to the New London Library, and I went through the microfilms. And back then they raced Saturday and Wednesday. So I'd go through the microfilms for Sunday, and if it wasn't Sunday, you'd look in Monday. And then you look in Thursday, and if not Friday. And you would scan them, print them out, and then I'd go home and make a spreadsheet. And that's how you'd figure it out. And then that took me up to like, because the programs, you know, the small programs, those aren't great for information. They're not easy where you can flip a modern day program and like, oh, there's your results, there's a date, but you know. So I would do that like into the 70s. And then the problem I had was my research did not match John Brower's. So this John Brower, you've heard us talk about John Brower Jr., Jolton Johnny Brower. Well, his father was like the first Speedbowl historian, and he wrote a book that covered the Speedbowl from when it opened to 1974. But his book just had like a paragraph about that would sum up the season, and then it would give the win totals for every division. It didn't give points. It didn't give a week-by-week thing like my website does. And there's mistakes in there. Like, and that's not to disparage John Brower. And but like there's one year where like in the paragraph it says I think Ron Cody had 8 wins, and then in the listing Ron Cody's not even listed. Like, and that happens. Like I did the program for a while. It happens.
Right.
When I interviewed him for the Speedbowl doc, I tried to work with him to see if we could figure out like why there was discrepancies, because in a perfect world you want that to match. It wasn't that he got pissed, but he didn't show any interest in working with me to figure it out. It was basically like his was right, and I knew his wasn't. Like I knew there was mistakes, but he wasn't interested in figuring it out. So, whatever.
Did you read his whole book?
Oh yeah, I mean the book's not long. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know he wrote a book.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of people consider it the authority, but then so that was up to 1974.
Right.
I started my research in 2005, so for 30 plus years, nobody tracked the history. So that's why people like Bob Potter and Phil Rondo, my research is different than what was known or what was promoted.
Right.
Because, I mean, the people at the track that have worked at the track, or people that worked in PR at the time, basically told me that there was no reference. So if somebody said that it was 100 wins, then they said, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's 100 wins. Let's promote it." Like it was more important that you had this statistical thing to do a promotion to get people like come watch Bob Potter win his 100th race.
Right.
That's a promotional tool. Whether or not they could verify or not was irrelevant to what they were. Their job was to promote, not to do statistical research. So, but as the guy doing the statistical research after the fact, I take that as, okay, well, then your numbers aren't accurate. Or you're at least telling me that you can't prove they're accurate, And so I know that I have a dated piece of material either from a program or a trade paper or a newspaper or the video, because I have a lot of the art, once you get into the 80s, or a video that shows who won. And again, a lot of people say that Bob Potter told me till the day he died that he had 99 wins. I have him, I think, with 96. Like that's I can't. And and same with Rondo. Rondo, I think, was promoted as having like 6 or 7 more wins than I have him.
Right.
Less than what I have him. And I told both of them, like, if you have the info, like, give it to me and I will change my site. That's the great thing about putting my stuff on the web is that I can change it if it's
Right,
ever wrong,
right.
you know? The one thing that bothers me about it is some people think, like, I feel like they think, like, I'm trying to, like, rewrite history. Like, I'm not trying to say that Phil Rondo has less wins than you thought he did. Like, that's not my goal. But
Right.
my goal was to have an accurate,
Yeah.
almanac.
Just the truth.
Right, an almanac of the listings. And when you add it all up, this is what it
I'm
comes
sure
up with.
guys like them probably take offense.
I mean, Rondo and Potter, God rest his soul. I have a good relationship with Rondo.
Yeah.
And, he just says that he thinks he has more. And that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. But I have no... it doesn't do me any good to just change my stats.
I used to have to go through this with Bruce Thomas
Yeah.
because he said, Diego, all your mini wins were illegal.
So that's a good one. He's another one.
So he'd say, prove it to me, Diego. So I do have a trophy at home, and I think I forgot. I did find a piece that I did win one of my 3 or something.
Right.
2 of them were illegal, and 1 was legal. And I might have been cheating for the one. I just didn't get caught. I don't know.
So he's another one where, for some reason, when I started, their mini stats that were available
Yep.
were Saturday night mini stats.
Yes.
Which was only 95, and they existed for like 5 years on Sunday, which is where Bruce Thomas Sr. won a ton of his races.
Yeah.
And that totally confused me. I know, like, Bruce and Glenn, the juniors were kind of like, oh, your stuff's all messed up and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but they're saying it, and it was confusing.
Right.
And again, Bruce Sr. was always good to me. I think I have his right now. I'm not sure. I remember Sean Buffington. He came back in like 2008.
Oh, yeah.
And he came back, and he was telling me that he had 20 wins. And I didn't. The legends were tough to find because they had a lot of like promotional races, like when the legends first started, and like the press wouldn't really cover them or anything.
Yeah.
But he brought me a bunch of trophies that were unlabeled, and I said, listen, dude, I'm not doubting you, but like 20 trophies doesn't help because I know they give at the time, at least they gave 2 trophies, one to the car owner, one to the owner. So I'm not saying that you are padding your stats,
you needed
but
proof.
Right.
You needed.
But here's the thing: as time has gone on, and he's long since left the bowl, but he was right. I found his 20 wins, but he was not happy with me, I should say. But I eventually got it. But they had to be on, where you have an unlabeled trophy is not a verifiable stat.
Right.
You know what I mean? I remember Ed Gertch, when I was hyping up Al Stone catching him, he's like, I got one. I think it was one more. He's like, I got one more win than you're saying I have. And he brought me the program that showed the matrix that showed where I had the error. And I fixed it immediately. That's the one I remember. It was like, finally somebody brought something with good info, and I can make the revision, Yeah, so it can be frustrating sometimes with trying to verify the stats. And people have asked me, would you ever do Thompson? And I don't think Thompson really I don't want to say they don't care about their history because they clearly do. You go into the shop in the pits, they got beautiful stuff there. But in terms of statistical data going race for race and kind of create wins, I mean, it's a lot of work. And then it gets crazy where
there's a lot of commuting for you to do that too.
Yeah, I'd have to drive up to Thompson, right? That would not be fun. But then you get into things like, I used to count enduros as exhibitions and not as a win. And then the more I did it, the more people I talked to, they're like, no, that's a race too. And so now I keep those. Now I'm in a spot where I have powder puff derbies that I have those as exhibitions. But again, those are races as well. But the problem with those is they're like demolition derbies where you can't really find the winners.
Right.
But when it comes to a demolition derby, especially when you go back into the 80s, you will see ad after ad after ad after ad that there's going to be a demolition derby on August 28th, and then you'll never see a result for who won it on August 28th.
Right.
It was all about the promotion, and because the press wouldn't go there.
Right.
They wouldn't go there on a Sunday.
Yeah, right,
To
to watch
report.
that,
Right.
yeah.
And so there's no record of it. With the Powder Puff Derbies, I don't want to get into that because then if I add them, if I have the Powder Puff, which I do, I have a list and I have a bunch of dates because, like I said, they promoted them like crazy. But from like the first one in 1965 to like the early 80s, I have maybe half of them.
Right.
And if I take all those and lump them into my career wins list, it immediately makes my career wins list incomplete because I have a division in there where I don't have a bunch of the,
Right.
you know what I mean? And so I don't really want to do that.
Right.
So there's some tricky parts to it. But listen, I'm glad I did it. I hadn't met Tisha then. I was kind of I was in a boring part of my life. I didn't have a girl. I was just a single bachelor. I needed something to do. It was a perfect fit for that time in my life.
Right.
I don't think I would ever put that effort in again to do
That's
it.
a lot.
It's a ton of
Yep.
work. Ton of work, man. Yeah.